Hello guys, once again it's Matt and today we have another video. Thank you all the members, all the patrons, make sure to subscribe and let's hop in guys. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Su-27, the Flanker, an aircraft that it's probably coming around this year. I already did a lot of videos talking a little bit about the aircraft itself, the radars and versions and all of that. I have plenty of videos on that you can check. But I wanted to talk a little bit about post these fourth generations 80s aircraft being added, how the Su-27 would be like, how it would fare against the other machines, and basically compare it to the MiG-29, how it would probably feel like. So first things first, if you know, I already did a video talking about how the MiG-29 and the Su-27 they were meant to complement each other in different mission types. So, as you know from that video, I talk a little bit about how the MiG-29 was actually a lighter point defense aircraft, and the Su-27 was more of a high-altitude escort and high-altitude interceptor aircraft with a higher range than the MiG-29. It didn't even use any external fuel tanks that I know of, since it didn't need that. It had plenty of fuel to just fly around and with its own internal fuel, right? We have some things to consider about the Su-27. First things first, with the extended range, with the larger airframe of the aircraft, and overall just the way that the aircraft is, you can say that it is an aircraft that has a lot more inertia than the MiG-29, which means that it is going to take a little bit more time to probably accelerate and do other things. Minor differences, be aware, you know, probably only when you are really filled with fuel and filled with missiles. Remember, at least the Su-27, which is the Su-27S or the P variants, which are the first two versions of the Su-27, the S being basically VVS version that can carry bombs and unguided rockets as well, and the P variant being the PVO variant that it didn't have any air-to-ground capabilities beyond the gun, and I don't think it even had basically the CCIP for the gun as well. So it was a very, very focused aircraft on air-to-air and especially air interception. So with that in mind, you can kind of consider that the Sukhoi will be, when using a lot more fuel, when using the fuel missiles and stuff, it will be heavier. It is a heavy aircraft, a large aircraft, and even with the super maneuverability of it, it will tend to be a little bit more, not sluggish, because that's not the word, because even compared to a lighter Su-27, I mean, if you get only minimal fuel with a Su-27 without any missiles, and that would be, for example, for such a thing as an air show or something, the aircraft can do all the same maneuvers and even more due to the way that the wings are, and especially with the fly-by-wire system that you can actually turn it off and stuff. The maneuverability of it, it's amazing and even better than the MiG-29 in many aspects, right? So I'm not saying that it is sluggish, but in a general sense, especially remember this, on the acceleration kind of situation, it tends to be a little bit slower than the MiG-29 in acceleration, as I said. So for example, you can basically have the numbers for weight and stuff like that, and you can see that with the full loads of fuel and missiles and stuff, the Su-27 would have around 0.91 of a thrust to weight. So it is a heavy aircraft, man. But with 56% of internal fuel, it can get to 1.07. Even with 56%, it is not as, I mean, it's not the same as the MiG-29. The MiG-29 also with kind of half fuel and some missiles, it is around 1.09. So the MiG-29 had increased or a larger or just an overall better thrust to weight, and that says a lot about the aircraft. The MiG-29 is a lot lighter, and it's meant to be a point defense aircraft. With that in mind, it is an aircraft that accelerates fast, scrambles fast, and it will get to the target, a close target, not a very far target, but still very fast, right? And the Su-27 would be a more relaxed aircraft in the sense of taking a little bit more time to scramble, a little bit more time to climb, and a little bit more time to accelerate. So that would be the main difference between the Su-27 and the MiG-29. Does it mean that the MiG-29 is superior in all the senses? No. The Su-27 has a different purpose, as I talked about it in the other video. But the Su-27 is a lot heavier than the MiG-29, so expect it to be a lot more sluggish when fully loaded with fuel and missiles. Just expect that. It's like comparing an F-14 to maybe the F-16, right? Or an F-15 against the F-16 even. The F-14 and the F-15 are a lot heavier, a lot more heavy than the F-16, and that just basically makes you fly in a different way. So yeah, I had to actually answer to the phone, but I'm back. So yeah, basically it is that, right? The MiG-29 and the Su-27, in general sense of aerodynamics, they're very similar. But the Su-27, of course, it will be a little bit more sluggish. As you saw, it is when half weight, you know, it is around 1.02 of difference, so it's not a lot in the thrust to weight. So of course the Su-27 will always be a very agile aircraft and overall an amazing aircraft, but compared to the MiG-29, it will be a little bit more sluggish. The same way as an F-15 will be a little bit more against an F-16, right? In a dogfight especially. Everything else, the Su-27 had in the 80s, I'm not talking about the M variant, not talking about the Su-30, 35, 34, 33, any of these. We're talking strictly about the 80s versions, the S and the P, compared to the MiG-29s from the 80s as well, another aircraft from the 80s, because in the 90s it completely changed everything and all the MiGs became a lot better as well with the radar and stuff, and the SUs as well, so it depends very much on that. But on the sense of the way that everything is in the 80s, you know, the main point about the Su-27 will be its systems. So it is a little bit more refined and it has a little bit more space to work with everything. So first things first, the sensors. So obviously, because it's a bigger aircraft, it has better sensors. It uses the N001 radar, which uses the same tech from the N019 engine from the MiG-29, but it is a larger engine. So obviously it's better. It has a longer range of around 120 kilometers for fighter-sized targets, 115, 110 depending on the situation, and 140, 150 for bombers. So the range is really an improvement over the MiG-29. Also the IRST is better apparently, and overall the sensors are better together with other systems like data links. So the Su-27 had a proper data link. Obviously any MiG or older aircraft, they had some form of data link, but I think they actually stopped it for a while using these systems on the 29. I never heard of the 29 ever having in these times any data link, which is odd because in the 60s and 70s the MiG-21s and 23s had data links for ground controls, controlling the aircraft and stuff. So it is kind of weird, right? But still, the Su-27 had a data link. So what it means that even if you don't detect the target, if somebody on your team is detecting it, it should appear on your radar screen as well. So that would be very interesting. You're not supposed to actually be able to lock an aircraft like that depending on the situation. You still need the proper radar to lock, even though these aircraft were able to using the same frequency to shoot or get the final kind of basically signal for the missile of another aircraft, you know, so you can actually guide another aircraft missile with your own radar. But still, In a general sense, you still need for your own kind of missiles to actually be able to lock the target. But the data link would help a little bit. I hope they actually add this, especially in simulator. It would be amazing. So yeah, it would be an amazing aircraft in these longer range environments. And then we have the third thing that I talked about, the missiles. The first thing about the missiles is that obviously it can carry a lot more missiles than a MiG-29. So instead of carrying only 6 missiles, it can actually, this Su-27S can actually carry 10 missiles. So with the ACM pod it would be 8, but in a general sense it is 10 missiles, 4 R-73s for example, and then 6 R-27s between the P variants and the R variants. And the second thing is that you could from the get-go use the ER. There's a lot of misconceptions about these missiles with different dates and stuff. But in a general sense, the R and the ER, they were made in the same development. They are the same missile. They just had a different engine. So in the 80s, they already were using the ERs and ETs, obviously, on the Su-27. Only later they got into the MiG-29 as well, because the R and the T versions were meant to be used for the MiG-29. So that was the main thing, okay? It is using a better missile that we already have in the MiG-29, but still, it is the ER, the ET, obviously, and then 4 R-73s. So not only you have a lot of missiles, you still have a lot of performance in these missiles, with a lot of performance on the engines and the radar punching everything that it sees. So yeah, it's going to be kind of a game changer, especially for the Soviets, because it is kind of a different concept from what we've seen with MiGs so far. So it is nothing like the MiG-20. It's nothing like any MiG was ever made. It is a completely different type of design, a lot larger, with different ideas in mind, with data links and larger ranges, and being able to actually work independently more than the MiG. So the idea behind the aircraft, the doctrine, was completely different. So yeah, we need to consider that the Su-27S obviously will need a counter if it's added right now. For example, the F-16, I mean, can barely counter the MiG-29, the A variants, obviously. In the future, we will see C variants, but still, even with that, the Su-27 will require new types of aircraft to actually deal with it. The main one is obviously the F-15. That's the main one. I still think that it should be like a C after the MSIP. I think it was upgrade from the 80s, right? So at least something like that with AIM-7Ms and AIM-9Ms. To be able to kind of compare itself to the Su-27. And even then, the Su-27 can have a lot of advantages over the F-15, but they are going to be very similar to each other in many instances, especially in the BVR. So yeah, that would be amazing. Obviously, another one is the F-14B. It is a late 80s version of the F-14. We can maybe wait until we see the Su-33, which has a little bit more of the normal Su-27. So it is a version from the, I mean, it was normally called in the Soviet Union before the end of the Soviet Union as the Su-27K, okay guys? And it was basically having a little bit more refined aerodynamics for a dogfight with the canards, and also the ability to have a little bit more of a power on the engine, and also a little bit more on the sense of weaponry as well. It could, in theory, take some more advanced weaponries than in the sense to air to ground, basically, than the Su-27S. Even there are some even pictures of anti-ship missiles. We don't have that in DCS to actually confirm, but still, it is you know, an aircraft that it would be more comparable to the F-14B than the Su-27S. The F-14B can have the Su-33 as the, or the Su-27K as the counter, with the F-15C from the 80s to have the Su-27S as the counter. So that would be amazing, you know, but we will need these amounts of counters to counter this aircraft, because even though, as I said, it is a little bit sluggish compared to the MiG, just a tiny bit. Don't mind that. It's just a little bit compared to the MiG-29. It is still a more ready package. You know, it has everything to be a little bit more advanced than what the MiG-29 offered. But still, both of these aircraft were made to basically fight together, right? But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think the Su-27 will be like in the game, if it's going to be OP AF or it's going to be losing for the F-15s and F-14s. What you think about it, and yeah, let me know in the comments, and I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, and bye guys, see you.